The Miracle of José Salvador Alvarenga, 438 Days at Sea. On November 17, 2012, José Salvador Alvarenga, a 36-year-old Salvadoran fisherman living in Mexico, set out for what should have been a routine 2-day fishing trip. He left the coastal village of Costa Azul with his young companion, 23-year-old Ezequiel Córdoba. Neither man could have imagined that this journey would become one of the most extraordinary survival stories in maritime history. What happened next would test the limits of human endurance, willpower, and the instinct to survive against impossible odds. The departure. Alvarenga was an experienced fisherman who had spent years working the waters off Mexico's Pacific coast. He owned a small fiberglass boat, called a panga, measuring just 25 feet long. The boat had no cabin for shelter, only an open deck with a simple motor and minimal supplies. On that November morning, the weather seemed favorable. Alvarenga and Córdoba loaded their boat with basic provisions, some food, water, fuel, and fishing equipment. They planned to catch sharks and marlins, which would fetch good prices at the market. As they motored away from shore, heading toward the rich fishing grounds about 15 miles offshore, everything seemed normal. The sea was calm, the sky clear. Alvarenga felt confident. He had made this trip hundreds of times before. The storm strikes. By afternoon, the weather began to change. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and the wind picked up dramatically. What had been a gentle breeze transformed into a howling gale. The waves, once manageable ripples, grew into towering walls of water. Alvarenga and Córdoba struggled to control the boat as the storm intensified. Rain lashed down in blinding sheets, and the wind tore at everything not secured. Then disaster struck. A massive wave crashed over the boat, flooding the motor and rendering it useless. They were dead in the water. The two men tried desperately to bail out the water and restart the engine, but it was no use. The storm had disabled their only means of propulsion. Even worse, their radio equipment was damaged by the seawater, cutting off their ability to call for help. As night fell, the storm continued to rage. The boat was tossed about like a toy, carried further and further from shore by powerful currents. By the time dawn broke, they had been swept far out into the Pacific Ocean, with no land in sight and no way to navigate back. They were utterly alone in the vastness of the sea. The first days, hope and desperation. For the first few days, Alvarenga and Córdoba clung to hope. Surely someone would come looking for them. Surely they would drift back toward land. They rationed the small amount of food and fresh water they had brought, trying to make it last. But as days turned into a week, their situation grew dire. The food ran out. The water was gone. The tropical sun beat down mercilessly during the day, while at night they shivered in the cold ocean air. Their skin began to blister and crack from constant exposure to salt water and sun. Hunger gnawed at them constantly. Thirst became unbearable. Alvarenga knew they had to find a way to survive, or they would die within days. Drawing on his experience as a fisherman, Alvarenga began catching food with his bare hands. He would grab fish, sea birds that landed on the boat, and even sea turtles. At first, the thought of eating raw fish and drinking turtle blood repulsed him, but survival instinct quickly overcame any squeamishness. He showed Córdoba how to catch rainwater with their hands during brief showers, how to bite into fish and suck out the moisture from their flesh, and how to drink the blood of turtles and birds for hydration. It was a horrifying existence, but it kept them alive. Córdoba's decline. While Alvarenga adapted to their nightmarish circumstances, Córdoba struggled. The young man had not been a fisherman for long and lacked Alvarenga's mental fortitude and survival skills. As weeks turned into months, Córdoba's physical and mental state deteriorated rapidly. He refused to eat the raw food, finding it too revolting. He grew weaker day by day. The psychological toll of being lost at sea with no hope of rescue broke his spirit. He became withdrawn, then delirious. Alvarenga tried everything to keep his companion alive. He forced food into Córdoba's mouth. He tried to encourage him, to give him reasons to keep fighting. But Córdoba had given up. After approximately 4 months at sea, Córdoba made a desperate decision. In a moment of complete despair, he refused to eat or drink anything more. He told Alvarenga that he wanted to die, that he couldn't go on. Despite Alvarenga's pleas, Córdoba died several days later, likely from starvation and dehydration. His body lay in the boat with Alvarenga for 6 days before Alvarenga, in a state of grief and horror, committed his companion's body to the ocean. Now Alvarenga was truly alone. Alone in the vast Pacific. The death of Córdoba marked a turning point for Alvarenga. He had lost his only human companion, but he also felt a renewed determination to survive. He would not let himself give up as Córdoba had done. He would make it home, no matter what it took. The weeks and months that followed tested Alvarenga in ways that seem almost inhuman. He developed a routine to maintain his sanity. Each day, he would search the horizon for ships or land. He would fish with his hands, catching small fish, jellyfish, and anything else edible. When seabirds landed on the boat to rest, he would grab them and wring their necks, drinking their blood immediately and eating their flesh raw. Sea turtles became a crucial source of sustenance. When he managed to catch one, he would flip it on its back, cut into its shell with a knife he had, and drink the blood while it was still fresh. He learned to preserve some of the meat by drying it in the sun. Rain was a blessing that came irregularly. When storms passed over, he would lie back and open his mouth to catch drops of fresh water. He tried to collect water in containers, but the boat had few suitable vessels. The psychological challenges were perhaps even harder than the physical ones. Alvarenga talked to himself constantly to keep his mind active. He sang songs, recited prayers, and had conversations with God. He thought about his family back home, his daughter, his parents, his siblings. These memories kept him going when the urge to give up became overwhelming. There were moments of complete despair. Times when he considered ending his suffering by drowning himself. The loneliness was crushing. Days blended together until he lost all sense of time. Was it January? March? June? He had no idea. Hallucinations became common. He would see ships on the horizon that weren't there. He imagined conversations with family members. Sometimes he believed he could see land, only to realize hours later it was a mirage. His body transformed. He lost more than 100 pounds, becoming skeletal. His hair grew wild and matted. His skin became thick and leathery from constant sun exposure. His feet were permanently swollen and damaged. He looked like a ghost, barely human. Yet somehow, impossibly, he continued to survive. The ocean currents. Unknown to Alvarenga, ocean currents were carrying him on an incredible journey across the Pacific. His small boat drifted west, then northwest, traveling thousands of miles from where the storm had first struck. He passed through some of the most remote waters on Earth, areas where commercial shipping lanes were hundreds of miles away. The chances of encountering another vessel were virtually zero. The Pacific Ocean is the largest body of water on the planet, covering more than 63 million square miles. Alvarenga's tiny boat was an invisible speck in this vast expanse. Even if search parties had been looking for him, and they had long since given up after finding no trace, the odds of locating him were astronomical. As months passed, the currents carried him approximately 6,500 miles from his starting point, across the Pacific toward the islands of the South Pacific. Sighting land. On January 29, 2014, 438 days after leaving Mexico, Alvarenga saw something that seemed like another hallucination at first. A thin line on the horizon. Green. Solid. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, looked again. It was still there. Trees. Land. Real land. After more than 14 months at sea, his boat was approaching Ebon Atoll, a small coral island in the Marshall Islands, nearly 7,000 miles from where his journey had begun. As the boat drifted closer to shore, Alvarenga could see a beach, palm trees, and what looked like houses. His heart pounded. He tried to steer the boat using a makeshift paddle, but he was too weak. The boat eventually grounded on the reef surrounding the atoll. Alvarenga crawled out of his boat and collapsed in the shallow water. He tried to stand but fell. His legs, which had been cramped in the boat for over a year, could barely support his emaciated frame. He crawled across the reef, cutting himself on the sharp coral, and finally reached the beach. He could hardly believe it was real. Solid ground. He grabbed handfuls of sand, weeping with emotion. He had made it. Against all odds, he had survived. Discovery and rescue. Ola Fjeldstad and Russell Jack, two locals from Ebon Atoll, were walking along the beach when they spotted something extraordinary. A wild-looking man, barely clothed, emaciated, with long matted hair and a thick beard, stumbling toward them. Alvarenga tried to speak but could barely form words. He was severely dehydrated and malnourished. The two men, initially frightened by his appearance, quickly realized he needed help. They gave him water and food, then alerted the island's authorities. Alvarenga was taken to a local house where he was given medical attention. He tried to explain where he had come from, but his story seemed impossible. Mexico. Over a year at sea. In a small fishing boat. It sounded like the ravings of a madman. But his boat was there on the reef, exactly as he described, a battered, algae-covered panga that had clearly been at sea for an extended period. Inside were the remnants of his survival: turtle shells, bird bones, and the unmistakable evidence of someone living in the boat for months. News of the strange castaway spread quickly. Within days, his story had reached international media. The Mexican consulate was contacted, and Alvarenga's identity was confirmed. He was indeed the fisherman who had disappeared over a year earlier and had been presumed dead. The aftermath and verification. Alvarenga was eventually transported to a hospital in the Marshall Islands capital, Majuro, where he received comprehensive medical treatment. Doctors were astonished that he had survived. His body showed signs of extreme trauma, severe malnutrition, dehydration, anemia, and extensive tissue damage. But he was alive and, remarkably, expected to make a full recovery. His story generated intense scrutiny. Many people questioned whether it was possible for someone to survive 438 days at sea. Skeptics pointed out apparent inconsistencies or suggested he must have stopped at land at some point. However, extensive investigations supported Alvarenga's account. Oceanographers confirmed that currents could have carried a disabled boat from Mexico to the Marshall Islands over that time period. Marine biologists confirmed that his described diet of raw fish, birds, and turtles, supplemented by rainwater and animal blood, could theoretically sustain a person, though just barely. The physical evidence from his boat corroborated his story. In February 2014, Alvarenga was flown back to El Salvador, where he was reunited with his family after more than a year of believing he was dead. The reunion was emotional and overwhelming. Alvarenga struggled to readjust to normal life after his ordeal. Reflection and legacy. José Salvador Alvarenga's story stands as one of the most remarkable survival tales in modern history. His journey lasted longer than any other documented case of someone surviving alone at sea. His survival required not just physical resilience but extraordinary mental strength. Many experts believe that his psychological determination was the key factor that kept him alive when Córdoba perished. The will to survive, even in the most hopeless circumstances, can make the difference between life and death. The story also highlights the harsh realities faced by artisanal fishermen, especially in developing countries, who often work in dangerous conditions with minimal safety equipment or communication devices. Alvarenga's ordeal might have been prevented with better emergency equipment and GPS tracking. Today, Alvarenga continues to live in El Salvador. He has struggled with post-traumatic stress and the psychological aftermath of his experience. The ocean, once his livelihood, now holds traumatic memories. He has said in interviews that he still has nightmares about being lost at sea. Yet his story endures as a testament to the remarkable resilience of the human spirit. Against impossible odds, surrounded by nothing but water for over 13 months, José Salvador Alvarenga refused to give up, and somehow, miraculously, he made it home. The case of José Salvador Alvarenga continues to be studied by survival experts, marine biologists, and psychologists. His 438-day ordeal at sea remains unmatched in the modern era and stands as proof that the human capacity for survival can exceed what we believe possible. His story asks us to consider, what would we do in such circumstances? Could we find the strength to continue when all hope seems lost? Alvarenga's answer was clear: as long as breath remains, there is a chance, and that chance is worth fighting for.